It was just one of those games that everything went my way, and everything just completely went our way. Yeah.
The year is 1995, the Rugby World Cup semi-final, New Zealand versus England. More than 40,000 fans are packed into Newlands Stadium in Cape Town, and millions more are watching from around the world. England believe they have prepared for everything, but within minutes, something happens that makes it clear they have not prepared for this. The ball moves through the New Zealand backline and suddenly lands in the hands of a massive young winger. He receives the pass behind him, he adjusts his stride, beats one defender, then another. England fullback Mike Catt steps in to make the tackle. His attempt is futile. The young winger runs directly over him, flattening him like a steamroller. The crowd erupts, and in that moment, the world is introduced to something rugby has never seen before. His name was Jonah Lomu. He was only 20 years old at the time, and in just a few games, he would become the most famous rugby player on the planet. But the story behind that moment is far more complicated than a single incredible try. To understand how Jonah Lomu became a global icon, we have to go back to where his life began. Jonah Tali Lomu was born on May 12, 1975 in Pukekohe, just south of Auckland, New Zealand. His parents Happy and Semisi Lomu moved from Tonga to New Zealand just before his birth, and while Jonah was born in Auckland, he was sent back to Tonga to be raised by his mother's sister till returning to live with his parents in New Zealand just before his 7th birthday to start school at the time while speaking zero English. Up until about 5 or 6 years old, Jonah believed his aunt was his mother. It wasn't until he returned to New Zealand just before his 7th birthday to begin school that he discovered who his real parents were.
For 5-6 years, I called her mum, and it wasn't until I was about, I was 6 and I came back to New Zealand that I found out who my real parents were.
Life in South Auckland was not always easy. Jonah grew up in Mangere, a working class suburb that had vibrant communities but also struggled with poverty and gang violence, especially during the 1980s. The environment was tough, violence was common, and many young people were drawn into gangs. Jonah's own family experienced tragedy. He lost his uncle and a cousin to violent attacks. Those events deeply affected his family and shaped the way his mother looked at the future. She wanted something better for her son, something that would keep him away from the dangers of the streets. So she made a decision that would ultimately change Jonah's life. She sent him to Wesley College, a boarding school with a strong rugby tradition and a reputation for developing young talent. Wesley College has produced a long list of rugby professional players, many of whom have played for the All Blacks, Wallabies, and Samoa. Stephen Donald, Malakai Feketoa, Sekopi Kepu, KC Laulala, Nepo Laulala, Charles Piutau, Siale Piutau. The list could go on for a while. At the time, it was simply about giving Jonah a safer environment.
Boarding school, I think it's best for him, is far from some other children, not to go on the street. That's what I wish for him.
But it also turned out to be the place where one of the greatest rugby careers in history would begin. At Wesley College, Jonah quickly stood out. Even as a teenager, he was already enormous compared to most players his age. But even in that environment, it didn't take long for coaches to realize that Jonah was different. What truly surprised people wasn't just his size, it's how well he could move. Jonah wasn't just a powerful player, he was an exceptional athlete. At school, he competed in a range of athletic events, including the 100-meter sprint, hurdles, shot put, and even javelin. Despite weighing well over 100 kilograms while still a teenager, he was reportedly capable of running 100 meters in close to 11 seconds. That combination of size, speed, and power was extremely rare, and it made him stand out not just in rugby, but in almost every sport he tried. Rugby, however, quickly became his main focus. In his early years at Wesley College, Jonah played in the forward pack. It was a logical position for a player of his size. Jonah thrived in that physical environment. As his performances improved, he began to move through New Zealand's junior rugby pathways. He represented New Zealand schoolboys and later the New Zealand under-19 side, still playing primarily in the loose forward positions, but his athletic ability was beginning to open other opportunities. In the early 1990s, he was selected to play rugby sevens for New Zealand. This version rewards speed, power, and ability to beat defenders one-on-one. Those qualities suited Jonah perfectly. When he ran with the ball in sevens, his long stride and sheer strength made him incredibly difficult to stop. Once he built momentum, defenders often struggled even to slow him down. Even then, though, Jonah was still primarily viewed as a forward. That changed in 1994. Just before his senior debut for the All Blacks, coaches made a decision that would transform his career. They moved him to the wing. He brought the physical presence of a forward to a position usually reserved for much lighter players. At just 19 years old, Jonah Lomu was selected to play for the All Blacks. At the time, that made him the youngest All Black ever selected. It was an incredible achievement, but the start of his international career was not perfect. His debut came against France. The French team had targeted the younger winger, exposing his inexperience in defense. New Zealand ended up losing the match, and some critics began to question whether Jonah had been selected too early. But bear in mind, this was a tough French side. During the 1994 New Zealand tour, the last time a team beat the All Blacks at Eden Park, that was that French team. It was a tough match for Jonah, but the All Blacks coaches believed they had something very special. They believed that with time and experience, Jonah Lomu could become something extraordinary. And they were right, because just 1 year later, the entire world would see exactly what he was capable of. When the 1995 Rugby World Cup began in South Africa, Jonah Lomu had only played 2 international matches. Outside of rugby circles, most fans had never even heard his name, but that would change very quickly. In the opening matches of the tournament, Lomu immediately began scoring tries. He scored twice against Ireland, then another against Scotland, but it was in the semi-final against England that turned him into a global superstar. And from the previous matches, they knew that Lomu was powerful. They knew that he was fast. Jonah had something to prove, but no preparation could truly prepare England for what happened on the field. During the match, Lomu scored 4 tries, each one more dramatic than the last. He ran through defenders, he brushed off tackles, and of course there was the famous moment where he ran directly over Mike Catt like a steamroller. The image became one of the most iconic moments in rugby history. England captain Will Carling later famously described Lomu as a freak.
The occasion certainly hit Will Carling, the captain at the time. He said, "You were a freak." I mean, that's not an especially kind thing to say, but I think we kind of know what he meant.
Now we do.
By the end of the tournament, Jonah Lomu had scored 7 tries, making him the top try scorer of the 1995 World Cup. New Zealand reached the final but lost to South Africa in extra time. Yet despite that loss, the biggest story of the tournament was clear. Rugby had discovered its first global superstar. After the World Cup, Jonah Lomu's fame exploded. Rugby was growing internationally, and Lomu was the perfect face for the sport. He was powerful, he was exciting to watch, and he played the game in such a way that had never been seen before. Crowds filled stadiums just to watch him play. Defenders often needed 2 or 3 players to stop him. In many games, even that wasn't enough. His combination of size, strength, and speed earned him a nickname many fans still remember to this day: a freight train in ballet shoes. Over the next few years, Lomu continued to dominate international rugby. But just as his career was reaching its peak, something serious was happening behind the scenes. Something that would threaten not only his rugby career, but his life. In 1995, shortly after the World Cup, doctors diagnosed Jonah with nephrotic syndrome. It's a serious kidney disorder that affects the body's ability to filter waste from the blood. At first, the condition was manageable, but over time it became more severe. For an elite athlete, it was devastating news. Kidney disease can cause extreme fatigue, swelling, and weakness, yet Lomu continued to play at the highest level. For years, many fans had no idea that he was battling such a serious illness. Despite his condition, he continued to score tries and dominate games. 4 years after the incredible World Cup in 1995, Jonah Lomu arrived at the 1999 World Cup with something to prove. His performance in South Africa had been so dominant that many wondered whether it had been a once-in-a-generation moment, a player catching lightning in a bottle during one magical tournament. But by 1999, Lomu was no longer the unknown 20-year-old winger who had taken the world by surprise. Now, he was rugby's biggest star. Defenders had studied him, coaches had designed defensive systems to specifically stop him, opponents knew exactly what was coming. And the problem for them was it still didn't work. Once again representing the All Blacks, Lomu entered the tournament as one of the most feared players in world rugby. Throughout the competition, he continued to demonstrate the same terrifying combination of speed and power that had made him famous 4 years earlier. When he received the ball with space ahead of him, defenders struggled to bring him down. One of the most memorable moments came during the semi-finals against France. In that match, Lomu produced another dominant performance, scoring 2 powerful tries and repeatedly breaking through the French defense. At one point, he simply powered through multiple tackles, dragging defenders with him towards the try line. For a moment, it looked as if New Zealand were heading towards another World Cup final. But rugby can be unpredictable. France mounted one of the greatest comebacks in World Cup history, scoring a series of stunning tries to overturn New Zealand's lead. And despite Lomu's efforts, the All Blacks were defeated 43-31 in a dramatic upset.
For me, definitely 99 World Cup was the worst changing room memory that I could have. But the better team won on the day.
The All Blacks would eventually finish 4th in the tournament. Yet, even in defeat, Lomu had once again shown the world that his 1995 heroics were no accident. Across 1995 and 1999 tournaments combined, he had now scored 15 Rugby World Cup tries, an extraordinary record that would stand for years. By the end of the decade, Jonah Lomu was not just a star of the sport, he had become its global icon. However, in the early 2000s, his illness had worsened significantly. Eventually, his kidneys began to fail. By 2003, Lomu was undergoing dialysis several times a week, and without a transplant, doctors warned his future could be extremely limited. In 2004, Jonah Lomu received a kidney transplant from his close friend Grant Kiriyama, a New Zealand radio presenter. The transplant saved his life. For many athletes, that would have been the end of their sporting career, but Jonah Lomu was not ready to give up on rugby. After months of recovery and rehabilitation, he made an incredible comeback. He turned to professional rugby in 2005. Although he was no longer the unstoppable force of his early career, fans were inspired simply by seeing him back on the field. His determination showed the same strength that had defined his entire life. Even after his playing career slowed down, Jonah Lomu remained one of the most recognized figures in sport. He used his platform to support charities, particularly those helping children and people with kidney disease. He worked with organizations like Kidney Kids New Zealand and UNICEF. He also remained closely connected to his South Auckland community. Despite his global fame, he never forgot where he came from. Friends often spoke about his generosity. There were stories of Lomu quietly helping people with medical bills, school fees, or financial struggles. He understood the challenge of growing up in a difficult environment, and he wanted to help others find better opportunities. On November 18, 2015, tragedy struck. Jonah Lomu passed away unexpectedly at his home in Auckland. He was only 40 years old. The cause was linked to complications from his long battle with kidney disease. The reaction from around the world was immediate. Tributes came from players, political leaders, and fans from across the globe. In New Zealand, people gathered to honor one of their greatest sporting heroes. Young rugby players performed the haka in tribute. Teammates shared stories of his kindness and determination. and fans remembered the moments when he had made them jump out of their seats in amazement. Today, Jonah Lomu is remembered as far more than just a great rugby player. He changed the sport. Before Lomu, wingers were typically small and fast. After Lomu, teams began searching for players who combined size, strength, and speed in new ways. His influence can still be seen in modern rugby. Players across the world have tried to replicate the physical style he introduced, but very few have ever matched the impact that he had on the game. Jonah Lomu's story is one of talent, resilience, and determination. From the tough streets of South Auckland to the biggest stage in world rugby, he overcame hardship, illness, and unimaginable pressure. And in doing so, he became one of the most unforgettable athletes the sport has ever seen. Not just in rugby, but any sport. Because sometimes a player doesn't just win games. Sometimes a player changes the entire game forever and changes sports forever. And Jonah Lomu did exactly that. Well, that's all I have for today, guys. Thank you for watching. If there's a player you'd like to see a video on, leave a comment. Please like and subscribe. It'll really help the channel grow. And once again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And see you in the next video.